Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, your heart pounding like a prisoner against the walls of your ribs. There's no intruder in your house, no looming deadline you forgot, just a vast, yawning emptiness inside you, a voice whispering something you've spent your entire life running from. You don't know who you are. Not really. You know your name, your job, the roles you play, the dutiful child, the reliable friend, the high-achieving professional. But strip those away, and who remains? The thought is so unsettling you immediately reach for distraction. The glow of your phone, the mental replay of yesterday's conversation, the half-formed plans for tomorrow, anything to outrun the silence. Because in the silence, the truth waits. You've spent years, decades, constructing a life that looks like movement, hustling toward goals, collecting achievements, curating an identity that earns approval. But beneath it all, there's a nagging sense of fraud. A fear that if you stop, even for a moment, the whole facade will crumble and you'll be left staring into the abyss of a question you've avoided since childhood. What if none of this is me? Here's the paradox. You are both the prisoner and the warden. The part of you that flees, that fills every spare second with noise, productivity, or numbing pleasure, isn't some external enemy. It's you. A survival mechanism honed to perfection, convincing you that the answer to your unease lies in more success, more validation, more control. But the harder you run, the louder the emptiness echoes. Why? Because you're not running towards something. You're running from something. From the terror of confronting the raw, unfiltered core of your being, the parts you've disowned, the wounds you've buried, the primal uncertainty of existing without a script. Think of the last time you were truly alone with your thoughts. No podcasts, no scrolling, no to-do lists. How long did it take before discomfort crept in? Before you felt the itch to do something, to be someone? That itch is the clue. It's the shadow of the self you've abandoned in your desperate flight towards safety. But what if the very thing you're fleeing, the silence, the uncertainty, the unvarnished truth of your existence, is the only path to freedom? History's greatest minds have grappled with this dilemma. Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom, the paralyzing awareness that you and you alone must choose who to become. Carl Jung warned that until you confront your shadow, it will dictate your life from the darkness. Camus saw the absurdity. Humans, desperate for meaning in a silent universe, inventing purpose to avoid the void. Yet here's the twist. The void isn't your enemy. It's the mirror. Every time you silence it with another drink, another promotion, another relationship, you're refusing the one thing that could end the chase, stopping. Not as surrender, but as revolution. To stand still, to let the dust settle, and to finally ask, without flinching, who am I when I'm not running? The answer won't come in words. It's not a resume bullet or a social media bio. It's the shiver of recognition when you stumble upon a forgotten memory, the ache of a childhood passion you dismissed as impractical, the rage or grief you've learned to swallow because it wasn't acceptable. This is the fork in the road. You can keep running, stacking achievements like sandbags against the flood of your own awareness. Or you can do the one thing your psyche has fought tooth and nail to avoid: turn around. The man who stops running from himself isn't fearless. He's something far more dangerous, willing to face the fear. And in that confrontation, he discovers a truth that changes everything. The real tragedy is not that we run, it's that we don't even realize we're running. We mistake motion for progress, distraction for peace, and identity for self. We tell ourselves we're building a life when, in truth, we're constructing a labyrinth, one designed to keep us from ever reaching the center. But why? What force could be so powerful that it twists the human mind into an instrument of its own evasion? The answer lies in a collision of psychology, philosophy, and the unspoken rules of society, a trifecta of influences that shape us before we're even aware we're being shaped. From the moment we're born, we're taught to trade authenticity for approval. A child cries and is shushed for being too much. Another expresses anger and is punished for being difficult. A third dreams of art but is steered towards something practical. Slowly, instinctively, we learn to amputate the parts of ourselves that meet resistance. Psychologist Donald Winnicott called this the false self, a mask crafted to please others to survive. The tragedy: by adulthood, the mask isn't just something we wear. It's who we believe we are. Carl Jung took this further. What we reject in ourselves doesn't disappear. It becomes the shadow, the reservoir of everything we've deemed unacceptable. And here's the cruel twist. The more we deny our shadow, the more it controls us. The workaholic isn't running toward success. He's running from his own inadequacy. The people pleaser isn't just kind. She's terrified of abandonment. Every addiction, every compulsion, every relentless pursuit is, at its core, an attempt to outpace something we refuse to face. But the individual psyche is only part of the equation. Society acts as both accomplice and warden. Friedrich Nietzsche saw it early. Morality is the herd instinct in the individual. From birth, we're handed an invisible checklist: be attractive, be productive, be positive, be normal. And we internalize it so deeply that we mistake its voice for our own. The French philosopher Michel Foucault exposed how institutions, schools, religions, corporations don't just control behavior, they shape identity. We're not forced to conform, we're trained to want to. The result: a world where the pursuit of self is commodified into self-help books, mindfulness apps, and career coaching, all while the system ensures we never actually stop long enough to ask, who is this self I'm trying to improve? Underneath it all lurks an even deeper terror: existential dread. Jean-Paul Sartre called it the nausea, the vertigo of realizing we're free, utterly free, to define ourselves in a universe that offers no answers. Albert Camus argued that the only serious philosophical question is whether to live at all in the face of this absurdity. Most of us never get that far. Instead, we invent purpose where there is none. We lose ourselves in religions, ideologies, or the cult of busyness because the alternative, staring into the void and accepting that we alone must create meaning, is too terrifying. As the psychologist Ernest Becker wrote in The Denial of Death, human civilization is, at its core, a symbolic defense mechanism against the knowledge of our own mortality. We don't just fear death, we fear the implications of a life without predestined significance. Even our brains conspire against us. Cognitive biases like the illusion of control, overestimating our influence over events, and just-world fallacy, believing life rewards the virtuous, keep us chasing the delusion that if we just run faster, we'll outmaneuver chaos. Meanwhile, dopamine, the neurotransmitter of desire, fuels our addictions to achievement, validation, and distraction, ensuring we never stop long enough to question the chase. Gabor Mate, the physician who studies addiction, puts it bluntly: not all addictions are rooted in trauma, but all traumas lead to addiction. And the most widespread addiction of all, avoiding ourselves. This is the hidden problem. We are not just running from pain, we're running toward a mirage. The perfect self, the finished product, the day when we'll finally be enough. But that day never comes because the very act of running reinforces the belief that we are incomplete. Philosophers have whispered the truth for centuries. Kierkegaard, the self is a relation that relates itself to itself. Nietzsche, become who you are. Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The common thread: self-awareness is the antidote. But here's the catch: awareness isn't passive. It's rebellion. It means dismantling the false self brick by brick, facing the shadow, and staring into the existential abyss without flinching. The man who stops running doesn't find a polished, finished version of himself waiting at the finish line. He finds something far more unsettling: the raw, unfiltered truth of his existence. And from that truth, real life begins. But what happens if he doesn't stop? What are the consequences of a life spent in flight? The greatest danger of the endless chase is not that it fails, it's that it works. Not in the way you hope, of course. You won't outrun the hollowness, but you will numb it, distort it, bury it so deep that its screams become background noise. And that's far more sinister, because when avoidance succeeds, it doesn't feel like a prison, it feels like life. Every time you silence an impulse because it's not you, every time you swallow a protest to keep the peace, every time you choose the safe path over the one that terrifies and excites you, you're not making a choice. You're surrendering to conditioning. Over time, these micro-betrayals accumulate. The result: a life lived in the second hand, a patchwork of borrowed desires, inherited fears, and performances so rehearsed you forget you're acting. Psychologist Alice Miller called this the drama of the gifted child, the tragedy of those who learn too young to earn love through compliance. As adults, they become masters of their craft, flawless in execution, empty at the core. The world applauds their competence while mourning silently the absence of their fire. Here's the cruel joke: the more frantically you try to control your life, the more it controls you. Neuroscience reveals the illusion. The brain craves predictability, constructing narratives to explain chaos. I failed because I didn't work hard enough. If I just optimize my routine, I'll finally feel secure. These lies feel empowering until they collide with reality: a layoff, a breakup, a diagnosis. Suddenly, the truth emerges: you were never in control. You were just building sandcastles below the tide line. Viktor Frankl, survivor of Auschwitz, saw this clearly. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But most never reach that pivot. Instead, they double down on the chase, mistaking motion for meaning. Emotions buried alive never die. They metastasize. Consider the man who doesn't do anger. Where does it go? Into passive aggression, into unexplained fatigue, into the slow-burning resentment that poisons his relationships. Or the woman who refuses grief, how does it resurface? As chronic anxiety, as a phobia of intimacy, as the haunting sense that joy is always just out of reach. Gabor Mate's work with addiction patients reveals the pattern. Trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you when what happens to you goes unmetabolized. The body keeps score. The mind wages guerrilla warfare, and the bill always comes due. Society rewards the runners. Hustle culture glorifies burnout as dedication. Consumerism sells the lie that the next purchase will fill the void. Social media turns identity into a marketplace. Curate your persona, monetize your pain, perform your healing. The message is clear: keep moving. Never question the game. Philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls this the burnout society, a world where exploitation no longer requires chains because people willingly optimize themselves into exhaustion. The most insidious oppression isn't forced labor, it's the internalized demand to be more productive, more resilient, more happy. At the extreme, the chase becomes existential jet lag, a life spent racing toward horizons that dissolve upon arrival. Arthur Schopenhauer saw it coming. Life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. Achieve your goal and boredom sets in. Fail and pain consumes you. The solution: chase the next goal. The cycle is airtight. Modern research confirms it. The hedonic treadmill ensures that no achievement brings lasting satisfaction. Raise your income. Your desires inflate to match. Find love. Soon you'll crave the dopamine of new romance. Even enlightenment can become another trophy. Look how mindful I am, missing the point entirely. The consequences are not punishments. They're symptoms. Chronic fatigue. That's your body rebelling against a life it wasn't built for. Midlife crises. That's your suppressed self staging a coup. The inexplicable sadness in quiet moments. That's the real you tapping on the glass. Most misinterpret these signals. They pathologize the wake-up call as a malfunction. I need more discipline. I should meditate harder. But the truth is the opposite. The system is working perfectly. Your psyche is designed to revolt when you betray it. The French philosopher Blaise Pascal saw it centuries ago. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. We've perfected the art of distraction, but the void remains. and it whispers the question we spend our lives drowning out. What are you running from? The answer won't be found in another self-help book or productivity hack. It waits in the one place you've refused to go, the stillness beneath the storm. But how? How does one stop running when the entire world, and your own mind, screams that you must keep moving? The moment you stop running is the moment the real battle begins. Not because the chase was easy, but because it was familiar. The labyrinth of avoidance, for all its dead ends, was a structure you knew. Stepping out of it means facing the wilderness of raw existence where there are no maps, no finish lines, and no guarantees. This is where most turn back, but you won't. The world worships motion. Therefore, your first rebellion is non-movement. Not the passive stillness of laziness, but the volcanic stillness of a predator poised to strike. You sit, you breathe. You let the thoughts come, the guilt about wasted time, the itch to check your phone, the gnawing fear that this is pointless, and you do nothing. This is active waiting, the practice Buddhist monks call sitting with the tiger. The tiger is your mind, your past, your unmetabolized grief. It roars, it threatens. But if you don't flee, something miraculous happens. It exhausts itself. And in that exhaustion, clarity emerges. Psychologist Carl Rogers had a term for this. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. Now the real excavation begins. You start noticing the micro-rejections, the times you stifle a laugh because it's too loud, the anger you dismiss as irrational, the desires you shame as selfish. Each is a breadcrumb leading back to a disowned part of yourself. Jungian therapy calls this shadow work, but you need no analyst to begin. Simply ask, what emotion do I least allow myself to feel? Who was I before the world told me who to be? What would I do if no one were watching? The answers aren't pretty. You'll meet the coward, the tyrant, the needy child, the versions of yourself you've spent a lifetime denying. But here's the secret. Integration isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. With the shadow comes the void. You'll feel it first as vertigo, the dizzying realization that no belief system, no relationship, no achievement can ultimately justify your existence. This is camus, absurd, the futility of a life devoid of intrinsic meaning. Most flee here back into the arms of dogma or distraction. But you'll do the unthinkable, you'll stare into it. And as you do, a shift occurs. The absence of predetermined meaning doesn't destroy purpose, it liberates it. As Nietzsche proclaimed, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Now you choose your why not from fear or conditioning, but from something far more terrifying, genuine preference. Philosophy won't save you, neither will therapy. Freedom is lived. It's in the moment you say no when you mean it despite the trembling hands. Create art you're afraid to share. Stay present during sex instead of performing. Quit the job that's killing you, even without a backup plan. Viktor Frankl's logotherapy reveals the core truth. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This is where theory becomes flesh. You've been taught that selflessness is virtuous. It's not. It's violence against yourself. The man who neglects his own needs becomes a resentful martyr. The woman who sacrifices her truth births 1,000 passive aggressions. Ayn Rand was right about one thing. The man who does not value himself cannot value anything or anyone. This isn't license for cruelty. It's the recognition that you cannot pour from an empty cup. The oxygen mask goes on you first. 1. The daily questioning each morning. Ask, what am I pretending not to know today? 2. The fear inventory. List your top 3 avoidances. Then lean into 1. 3. The pleasure audit. For 1 week, note every time you mute joy out of guilt. Then stop doing it. 4. The death meditation. Visualize your last moments. What will you regret not doing? Start doing it now. It will hurt. Relationships will shatter, the ones built on your compliance. Colleagues will call you difficult. You'll wake some nights gasping, craving the comfort of your old chains. But then one ordinary Tuesday, you'll catch yourself mid-laugh and realize, this is mine. No one is performing. this joy is real. And in that moment, you'll understand what it means to inhabit your life rather than haunt it. But this is only the threshold. The final revelation awaits, the one that redefines everything. Here's the secret no guru will tell you. You were never broken. Not when you failed. Not when you burned out. Not when you lay awake at 3 a.m., gutted by the fear that you're wasting your life. These weren't signs of weakness. They were the friction of a soul growing against the confines of its cage. The man who stops running doesn't find himself. He realizes something far more radical. He was always there. You've spent years believing in a dichotomy. The flawed you that exists now, the ideal you that's perpetually just out of reach. This is the grand deception. There is no future self coming to redeem you. No enlightened version who will finally have it all figured out. This, the messy, contradictory, glorious present you, is the only self that's ever been real. Alan Watts saw through the ruse. Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. The seeker is the sought. The observer is the observed. The moment you stop chasing wholeness, you realize you were never fragmented to begin with. All spiritual traditions whisper the same heresy in different tongues. Zen warns, chop wood, carry water, enlightenment changes nothing. Sufism laughs, you've been swimming in an ocean, begging for water. The Tao Te Ching murmurs, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. The paradox. Self-actualization isn't an achievement, it's a surrender. You don't climb toward your true self. You stop climbing and discover you were already home. Neuroscience confirms this. The brain's default mode network, the circuitry of self-narration, goes quiet during moments of pure presence. Ecstatic dancers, meditators, and artists in flow states report the same phenomenon, the disappearance of the seeker. What remains isn't some perfected being, but something far more ordinary and extraordinary, aliveness itself. Here's the hardest pill to swallow. You might not be special. Not in the way culture promised. Your awakening won't make you rich. Your authenticity won't always be celebrated. Some days your true self will be as unremarkable as dishwater bored on a Tuesday, picking at a hangnail, forgetting why you walked into the room. This is the final initiation. Can you love the mundane miracle of your existence? Not for what it achieves, but for what it is. Kierkegaard called this the night of infinite resignation. The one who embraces life despite its lack of ultimate meaning, not with despair, but with a quiet, subversive joy. Now you see the full picture. The world profits from your self-rejection. Religions sell salvation. The wellness industry peddles optimization. Even the self-help movement thrives on your sense of inadequacy. Your final act of defiance, to declare yourself complete, not because you're perfect, but because perfection was never the point. The cracks aren't flaws, they're how the light gets in. Your failures were initiations. Your lost years were the necessary wandering. As Jung said before dying, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. But here's what he didn't say: that choice isn't about creating yourself anew. It's about recognizing the self that's been there all along. So now, in this quiet moment, with all the illusions stripped away, one final inquiry remains. Who are you when no one is watching? When the achievements are forgotten? When the masks have all crumbled to dust? Don't answer. Live it. Breathe into the space where the question dissolves. Notice how the body knows before the mind, how the chest expands, how the fingers tingle with unexpressed potential. This isn't enlightenment, it's something better: aliveness. Raw, unfiltered, messy, and entirely, irrevocably yours. The man who stopped running didn't find himself at the journey's end. He finally understood there was never anywhere to go.